Last time you bluntly asked for a better deal. Second question, do you want a pay rise or a promotion or more responsibility? Have you ever gone to your boss and asked for it outright?
Yeah.
So these are some questions that made me read this book cover to cover. Do you know what holds you back more than anything else? Well, let me tell you bluntly now. It is your failure to ask for what you want.
True.
So this book that we are going to review today is called Just Ask the Right Questions to Get What You Want by Ian Cooper. So when he says this book is divided into 3 sections. Section number 1, he talks about 26 golden rules of why you should ask a question. And there is a strong reason, he says, rather than telling someone something, you should ask them a question. Because there is a difference between these two. You tell someone something, they may listen, they may not. It may go to their head, it may not. Whereas when you ask them a question, it makes them think and it puts them on the right path to action. So that is the very reason why I found this book very useful. I bought this book in 2008 and I read this once, but this time it is very special because I read it with an intention to review this book, so it gave me a complete different perspective. So he starts with this introduction. He says these 2 words would make a huge difference. So when I was talking about the 3 sections in the book, the first section was golden rules of just asking. Second section was technology of asking questions. So he says there is a way. So you see, he says right questions, right? There is a way and there is a method to ask the question correctly so you get what you want. Meaning you can engineer the questions in such a way that you get the answer you want. So that is, there are some 29 rules which talks about. So I have culled out 3 or 4 key rules that I have felt has helped in my life, and I'm going to present that to here. The third question is just ask yourself. So questions are not just for others. When you are alone, when you are in solitary side, so you ask these questions yourself to introspect. Meaning you ask the right questions yourself to introspect and identify your wants, desires, what you want to do. So that is the third section of this book. With that brief introduction, I am going to give you the sections in the book, and then he talks about the first golden rule. I am going to give you the 3-4 golden rules which I felt is very important. The first golden rule is, before you ask a question, never ever assume that the answer would be a no. That's the very first question, because many a times we don't ask a question just because we know that the answer would be a no. So the first golden rule is never ever assume that the answer would be a no. The second golden rule, he tells, and I personally feel that this is a very, very important rule, just because the knowledge base is so widening these days that there is no single person who knows everything. So this golden rule says, ask for an explanation. So when you go to a doctor, you get a prescription. We always fail to ask the doctor that, what is this medicine? How would it react on my body, and how will this treat my ailment? When you go to a car mechanic, he talks about this part is gone and you have to replace this. We never ask them, okay, what is that part? So we all fail to ask for that explanation. The reason why I feel that this rule is very important in our workplaces, there are many departments in our companies, right? When it comes to companies like Infosys or any other IT company, there is zillion technologies available. So there's no one person who knows everything. So it is always better to ask a question rather than feeling shy about it. The third important rule is ask nicely. So build a rapport. So when I was at UK, I used to interact with this team who deploys the code into production. So normally they don't do any code changes, rather they deploy what we give. So there was this nice man who made little bit tweaks to make sure that the code works fine, because based on his experience he felt that this code has some problem. So next time in the next shift I approached another person and I told him that this was a configuration change that the earlier support person made, and he said, no, that's not part of my responsibility. So the next statement he made was an eye-opener. He said, I told him that the earlier person who was in the earlier shift made this change for me. He said he would have asked nicely. So that is the second golden rule, which says ask nicely and you can get things done. This applies everywhere, right? You travel in an auto or a cab, you engage in a friendly conversation with the driver and you get things done what you want, right? Okay, now the fourth golden rule is, this is very important, this is how you structure the question. How can I, this is the question, right? How can I mindset? Adopt the how can I mindset. So one example he gives is, rather than saying I don't know or I can't do that, rather ask this question of how can I make this happen? How can I get this done? So this how can I puts you on the first step towards getting it done or learning something. Now moving on to the second section, which is the technology of questions. Right? The first technology is don't tell but ask. This is a rule which we already heard about, right? Don't tell, just ask. The second rule is, if it were you question, meaning you are in a tight situation, and the first question that you should ask is, if I were you, I would have done this. Most of the time we say this in the evaluation, right? If that is how a good evaluator does the evaluation. If I were you, I would have done this. This drives you towards remedying a situation, and not just it's more empathizing. The third technology is if you are able to, or how can you help me make this happen. Say for example, you go for a hotel booking and you are in a situation where the hotel is fully booked. The question that you should ask is, how can you help me get a slot, which is, maybe he may suggest you some other option, say an off-peak time or something. Okay, this is a very important question. Ask for the choice question. Most of the time we face this, right? So you go to a hotel and the waiter asks you, sir, tea or coffee? Meaning he limits the option to just two. What it actually means is he has only two options. So it works most of the times, but not all of the times. That is where the author says 75% of the time, if you ask the right question, you get the answer that you want. It is only that 25% odds where you may not get the answer, but you shrug it off and move on. So this is a good book that if you want to ask the right question, because that's the need of the hour as a leader, good leader. A good leader asks a good question, so you make the people start, trigger a good thought process. With that bit of introduction, this is a good book by Just Ask the Right Question to Get What You Want by Ian Cooper. When you have some time, please pick up this copy and read this, both you.